Gina Ross with Keller Williams Realty in Boone, North Carolina. I'm here today at Engel, Perry, and Isley Law Firm, and we're back again talking with Rob Engel. And today we're going to talk about 1031 exchanges and a little bit of wire fraud too. So I think this is going to be a good one. Very interesting stuff coming up. Take it away, Rob.
Thank you, Gina. We're in the mountains. About half our market is second homes. So one question we get a lot in the mountains is about 1031 exchanges. A 1031 exchange is basically you're deferring capital gains tax to the future. If you own a principal residence, then you get if you live there more than 2 out of the last 5 years, you get a homeowner's exemption, $500,000 for a couple. So you don't have to pay taxes if it's your principal residence. If it's a second home, maybe, or an investment property, people do what's called a 1031 exchange. If they don't want to pay, if they make a lot of money and don't want to pay capital gains tax when they sell their property. So if you own a property over a year, and you make money, you are subject to capital gains tax depending on your income. The capital gains tax is if you make over $48,000 a year, you pay 15% capital gains tax from $48,000 to about $533,000. Over $533,000 a year, the capital gains tax would be 20%. So people, if you're making a couple $100,000 profit, that could be, a fair bit of money, $40,000. So people want to defer; they don't want to have to pay that tax bite. So the 1031 is a way to defer paying the taxes. So what's involved? It has to be an investment property. Is a second home an investment property? Some people rent it out. That's a CPA question. I usually tell people to talk to a CPA. But other than that, the like kind real estate is a pretty broad concept. So I owned a piece of real property, vacant land between Boone and Blowing Rock. I sold that, made $200,000 or $300,000 profit, and rolled it over into some duplexes and townhomes in a different city. If you have a condo that's a rental and you want to buy a piece of raw land, if you have, it can go a house to apartments, or investment property is a broad definition. So you can't be related to the person. Some people try to abuse the system by, selling it to a child or a brother or a sister or something like that. So it has to be an arm's length transaction. And then you have to buy, if you sell a property for $300,000, you have to buy a replacement property. You have a relinquished property and a replacement property. You have to buy a replacement property for more than $300,000 or more than what you sold it for. If you don't do that, let's say you sell it for $300 and buy it for $250, you have to pay capital gains tax on the $50,000. That's called boot. So,
and there's a time limit too, right?
Right, correct. So we have to prepare the documents before closing. They all have to be signed off on. After closing, there's a 45-day identification period. So you either have to buy the property, or if you're not ready to close on the replacement property, you have to identify the replacement property. You can identify up to 3 properties. There's other formulas, but most people do up to 3. So one might fall apart. So you might want to have a couple of options. So you have 180 days after you close on the sale to buy the new property. So that's the main thing.
Okay.
There are 2 parties involved. There's the person that drafts the documents that represents the party, and then there's a qualified intermediary. The qualified intermediary is the person that holds the money, and they can't be related or have done work for you. I use another attorney. There are companies out there that are title companies usually, that have 1031 departments.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they do is the 1031s. And so we'll draft the documents, have the closing. The money will go from the settlement statement to the qualified intermediary. So all the proceeds from the sale, instead of going to you individually, you can't touch the money. That's the main thing. It goes to the qualified intermediary. The qualified intermediary holds the funds, and then they when you go to buy your new property, you tell the attorney that there's going to be money coming in from the qualified intermediary, and then they're going to wire the money directly to the closing attorney, and it'll be applied to your next purchase. The closing costs, or to do the 1031, it's about $1,250 to $1,500, about $500 or $750 for preparing the documents. The qualified intermediary I use is charge $750. So the title company's fees are about the same. So that's a brief summary. It is an effective thing. There are things called reverse exchanges, which are more complicated and more expensive, cost $4,000 or $5,000. That's where, if you know you want to buy a property before you sell the old property, so you buy your property, the title actually goes into what's called a exchange accommodator. They hold the property. It's usually an LLC. They hold the property until you sell the property you want to sell, and then you buy it from the exchange accommodating party. So that's more expensive, costs $4,000 or $5,000. They're construction 1031s, but anyway, talk to your attorney if you have questions, or a title company.
All right. Do we have time for a wire fraud question? Okay.
Briefly, you just need to be aware that wire fraud is a real thing everywhere right now.
Even in Little Boone, North Carolina?
Yes. Attorneys are losing millions of dollars a year on wire fraud. And we have policies, and you just need to be very, very careful when you are wiring money to double check and triple check that you're wiring it to the correct place.
When you get an email, it looks all official, still pick up that phone, right, and call
Correct.
your attorney's office and just say, hey, did you send me an email, and just double check, because there's
Correct.
a lot of money that's lost.
There are a lot of smart people that are hacking in through systems and writing emails. And we had a client who was buying, who got a letter from us the day before closing.
Letter, he means email.
An email from us saying to wire the money to this account for her closing. It was like $37,000. So that person got the closing, and we were waiting for, usually we get an official bank check or a wire, but in this situation, we were looking for an official bank check. And the person said, I wired it yesterday. So we stopped. We tried to resolve it as best we can, call the bank, call the FBI. They just want to be notified, and then to stop it. But eventually the bank came through. I was very thankful. I won't mention any names, but eventually the bank made them whole. But it took like 4 or 5 months and a lot of tears. I mean, the woman was in tears, and it was not a pleasant closing. So just be very careful if you're wiring money. There are a lot of smart people out there. Be very careful on a lot of stuff. I was talking to somebody the other day that they had a truck stolen because somebody sent an email to the trucking company, and there's just a lot of smart people trying to figure out how to stick it to the rest of us. So anyway,
Well, thank you. Thanks, Rob, and thank you for tuning in again.